Let me ask you, because I want to be fair, and I just asked you, and it seems you're giving me a forthright answer, that indeed you have come in with essentially the same plan that you offered 2 years ago, again, and it has not changed. And the most important thing is Ukraine cannot become a satellite country for NATO. Ukraine has to maintain itself as a sovereign, independent nation. And that's really, it seems to me, the foundation of what your negotiating demands are. But here's the question that I have to press you on now, because you're meeting with these guys. You're sitting with them, the Ukrainian side. You tell me Russia is in a good faith negotiation to find a solution. Can you look at these guys that you're negotiating with and tell me that they're also negotiating in good faith? Or is someone mandating what they can say and what they can't say?
Last time they were more independent and there was more freedom in their actions. And now I see that they're less independent.
Really?
What that reminds me of is it's like seeing a top manager hide in a huge corporation. Some decisions are up to them, but the matters of principle, whether to buy or sell the company, whether to issue new shares or enter a new market, they would need to consult with the board. So this is what I'm reminded of. They also become very nervous. They're constantly looking at each other. It feels as if they're watching each other.
In the negotiations, right. Like they were afraid? Like, did you sense like a tension? Like they were afraid to commit or to say anything?
Well, it's no surprise. As that time, they had a small delegation, 5 or 6 people, and after the talks, one of them was assassinated right after the talks finished. And it was the Ukrainian security service that killed him.
Denis Kuriv, March 2022, unofficial participant in the talks, killed, we think, by SBU, interestingly enough. Do you believe?
They never said he wasn't killed by the Ukrainian security service. He was killed by their security service in downtown Kiev.
For what? For something he said? Do you remember when in the conversation?
I remember him. Why do I remember him? I remember him very well because I think it was the first day. It was February 28th. We had a break and everybody went to have a smoke or to go to the bathroom or maybe to drink some coffee. And I think it was near a bar. There was a bar counter there. There was no bartender, and I stood there with Kiriev. We had a conversation maybe for 15 minutes about life in Crimea, because he used to live in Crimea, and we had a conversation for about 15 minutes about that. And after the break was over, we went back into the room. So that's why I remember him, and it was just a small talk.
Do you think they saw you talking with him and thought maybe you guys were too close? Or?
Everyone saw that I liked him, so it was no secret, and we didn't push anyone away. Some people came by to talk with us.
But here's the big point here. Here's the takeaway, right? The takeaway for me as a journalist is the possibility that some of the people that you are negotiating with, maybe, let me be very careful with my words, but they feel like they have a gun to their head in terms of how careful they have to be, what they agree to or don't agree to. In other words, they don't have the freedom, the liberty to have a true good faith negotiation. Do you sense that?
Yes. So that's what I feel. I feel that deep down. They're better than they're trying to look. They even want to say some things, but they can't. I saw 2/3 of the delegation were in the military uniform. They are military officers. And I look into their eyes. First, they're no different from Russian people. They look exactly the same. The uniform is similar. And what I see in their eyes is the unwillingness to fight. They don't want to go to war. They don't want to send their soldiers to die. Maybe because there's something human. What it takes to be an officer is still in them, because an officer must keep their soldiers safe as much as possible. I feel that.
So it sounds like what you're describing to me is a situation where someone, most likely it has to come from the top, Mr. Zelensky, doesn't want there to be a peace deal, and that may have something to do, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it may have something to do with why we're seeing an escalation of attacks on civilians in Russia, for example. Do you think those two things are tied?
Я бы разделил украинский народ.
I would draw a line between the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian army, the soldiers and those who suffer the most, those who are closest to the front, those who are being hit, and a small part of the ruling elite. Because it's like you're from Cuba, and I think the Ukrainian leadership, and I will try to speak very carefully, but to some degree, they're starting to look like Latin American dictators to me. At some point, they used to be good guys. That's when they came to power, and they promised a lot in the election. But then, gradually, they get reborn into dictators. And if you want to stay in power forever, you need a permanent enemy, and you need a war that does not threaten you personally in any way, and that does not threaten your family, because your family is abroad with British passports, and they feel very safe, and you cannot stop the war because you would lose control of the situation. Especially since foreign aid, weapons, money only flows as long as you're in a war. After the war is over, you lose this external support, and you lose the possibility to suppress any opposition that may arise in the country. And you will have to go for elections, and you will lose it, because people are tired. They want peace, and the soldiers want peace.
So you're saying the war is a necessity for the ruling party, including Mr. Zelensky in Ukraine, where for Russia, it's not a necessity.
Yes, absolutely. We don't need a war at all. So why did Ukraine see its situation deteriorate so much? Because 4 of its regions had referendums, and now they're part of Russia, officially. And Russia cannot leave those territories because it would be a betrayal for those people. You cannot betray the people. They are written down in the Russian Constitution as an integral part of its territory. But if you stop the fight along the line of contact, if you don't sign a true, lasting peace, if you just have a ceasefire, you know what will happen? There was the Karabakh region between Armenia and Azerbaijan. If it's a disputed territory, the region will become a huge Karabakh. And at some point, Ukraine, together with NATO, or if it becomes part of NATO, will try to get it back with force. And it will be the end of the world. It will be a nuclear war. We don't want to have a huge Karabakh. We don't want to have a pretext for a nuclear war on our side. A territory that will not be recognized by anyone will cause trouble. So we want to stop with a lasting peace and to have the territories recognized.
Would you say that Russia's reaction thus far throughout this war has actually been mild-mannered? Let me tell you why I'm asking you this question. I've only been in Moscow for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, so I don't know. But I talk to people because I'm a journalist. So I talk to drivers, I talk to people, and they love speaking English, so they all come and talk to me. And I find that most Muscovites and most Russians are angry at Mr. Putin and at you because too much talk, tired of talking. What those people are doing to us is horrible, they say to me, and it's time to start lobbing bombs and getting rid of them. We're mad at those people. Do you feel that? And you're a peacemaker. What is your reaction to that feeling, if I'm right, if you think I'm right?
Yes, our population does indeed demand that we take much stronger actions. And it was difficult for us to go for a second round of talks when Ukraine made a deliberate effort blowing up a passenger train, killing civilians, including children. Sometimes it happens that a missile is flying against a military target, and it is jammed, and it hits a residential building, and it leads to casualties. Sometimes the buildings are hit, and people die under the rubble. It is terrible, but it is part of the war. But when you have a passenger train, I think it was a 2-story train, you can see from a long distance, and the person who blows it up, who blows up the railway and the road under it, when they see the train and when they press the button was pressed manually. It is terrorism. It is not a train with tanks. It's not even a train with fuel. You can clearly see it's a passenger train, and they killed civilians on civilian territory.
And that's what makes Russians angry. Yeah.
Exactly. And after that, people say that we must strike them with the Oreshnik. We must destroy Kiev or Lvov, that it's enough with the talks. And so, of course, it's difficult for us.
Why do you think Zelensky sent his chief of staff to Washington after his conversations with you?
Обычно задача только одна — попросить больше денег.
Well, usually the goal is just to ask for more weapons and money, just to beg for more, to have the American taxpayers keep on funding him. I think you've already paid some billions, 200 or 300 billion, to fund his life there. It's like the Marshall Plan during World War II.
Do you know how much the Marshall Plan cost? $140 billion. Do you know how much, in today's money, do you know how much my country has already spent in Ukraine? $240 billion. That's crazy.
В современных ценах, да, в современных деньгах, план Маршалла, да?
Yeah. In modern money, yes.
It's crazy. That's in modern money, right? Well, the Marshall Plan money went to build things. But this money that you're giving now is used to kill and to destroy. So it's an anti-plan, an anti-Marshall Plan. Biden was the anti-Marshall.
It seems to me that as important as your negotiations with Ukraine are, what the world really needs is a good, fair negotiation that is fruitful between Russia and the United States of America. That is primordial to anything. And until that happens, say people who are smarter than me, everything else doesn't matter quite as much. Do you agree with that? Yeah. You do?
Да, я согласен. Я согласен, я думаю.
Yes, I do. I agree, and I believe that a lot really depends on how the relations between Russia and the U.S. will play out if there is peace. The United States will not only stop spending so much money on the war and destruction, it will get huge economic benefits because you signed a treaty on rare earths. And all of those rare earths are just a tiny share of the incredible riches that are available in Russia and of how much American businesses and American citizens could get through investment projects in Russia, through partnership with Russia and